Good morning, everyone. It's still a little early, and I think that more people will roll in. So if you would please go ahead and get some breakfast, get your coffee on so you're ready to ask lots of good questions at the end. I do have some planted questions, but I'm hoping that someone will just jump up out of the audience and have something to say. So since we have a virtual audience too, I don't want to wait too long. I'm sure people can roll in during my intro. So I want to welcome everyone to our Women in Engineering Breakfast panel. This is something we've done for the last 4 years, so this will be the 4th year. We seem to get better at it every year, and last year it had rave reviews. Everyone thought it was just the best panel. So I'm super excited about this year. I actually think it's going to be even better than last year's. And we've started to add all of these recordings to our YouTube channel. So if you go online and Google IEEE OES YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. It's got the WIE panels, it's got the YP panels, and several other videos there that you can check out. So this year, the IEEE OES adopted the Women in Engineering Diversity Pledge, and this is something that the Women in Engineering Affinity Group developed for IEEE. Well, anyone can adopt it, right? And the idea is that you would have diverse panels at your conferences, at your workshops, right? And this goes both ways. So for instance, if you go to a Women in Engineering conference, they don't want to have all women on the panel, right? We would also have some men, right? So the idea that there would be diversity, and we're gonna take that one step further with IEEE OES, and we're bringing that diversity all the way up to the leadership, right? We want it from the top to the bottom in our organization. And because of that, we're also looking at incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion into our strategic plan. Oh, I forgot to switch the thing. All right. So we're in the process of forming a diversity, equity, and inclusion ad hoc committee. At the same time, we put in for initiative funding for something we're calling WIE Propel program. It's much like our YP Boost program, but focused specifically on women and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the idea is that anyone could apply for this. You don't have to be a woman. You can be a supporter of women. You can be, identify with any gender, right? As long as you're willing to support women in diversity and equity inclusion, you could then come in and we'll bring you again into the leadership of the society to help us make these kind of decisions, and they'll join the DEI ad hoc committee. And so this is our plan to sort of give the first boost into this DEI ad hoc committee. And at the same time, we'll be able to bring in these people who are doing that kind of support and give them support, right, to be able to help us learn and grow. So I want to give everybody a chance to grab some food, and I'm gonna, because I have 10 minutes to talk to you before we're gonna start our videos. But I want to give a thank you to our panelists. I think that this is a difficult topic. I'm really glad that they accepted my invitation to come and talk to us about this. I don't want anyone to underestimate the emotional and cognitive burden that there is when we talk about these kinds of things, especially people who have experienced some of the really intense emotions that are associated with being on the receiving end. So I really appreciate that they're here, and I hope that following this panel, we'll all be able to go out into the world, right, and become allies, become champions, right, be able to recognize when these sorts of things are happening. And I would like us to start at this conference. I want you to pay attention. I want you to see how people are experiencing the conference, particularly people of diverse backgrounds. And if you see something happening, we want to know about it, right? We'd love to know how we can improve. But also, this is something they talked about yesterday in the JEDI panel. You can't grow if someone doesn't tell you when you're doing something, right? There's no way for you to understand and change and grow as a person if no one informs you that you're making those mistakes, right? So really just keep your eye out starting today. And I'm going to try to stay on schedule because I don't want to lose anyone. So I'll give you about 4 minutes to get some food, and then, yeah, real fast. You don't have to snarf it down, though. You can take your time eating it. You'll have time to eat it during the presentations. It also gives some people time to roll in. I know a few people that were like, I'm coming. I might be a little late. So hopefully they'll show up. And those of you that are online, if you are thinking of questions for our panelists, please jot them down, send them in the chat, right? We won't do questions until the end, but I would love for you to start putting questions in soon so that we have some questions. You can do it as you think of them, right? We won't answer them on the fly until the end, but you can go ahead and stick them into the chat, and we have someone monitoring the chat so we can get those questions at the end. And again, for our virtual audience, you probably can't see what's going on. There are people coming in late, so this is the reason we're waiting. We want some more people to roll in here and enjoy our breakfast. Well, I'm glad to see there are at least some people here after the gala last night. It definitely was some good entertainment going on. I'm happy that anyone is awake at this hour. Yeah. I mean, I've been awake for well over an hour, but probably not other people. And the presentations are wonderful presentations, so I'm kind of hoping a few more people come in before I move on to the presentations. All right, I'm going to go ahead to try and keep us on schedule and go forward with introducing our first panelist. So our first panelist is Dr. Cinda P. Scott. Cinda is the director of the School for Field Studies, Center for Tropical Island Biodiversity Studies program in Boca del Toro, Panama.
Hi, my name is Dr. Cinda Scott, and I'm honored to be here today to talk to you about building equity in ocean science. I am a marine biologist, first and foremost. I wear many other hats and played many different roles, but my first true love and passion is marine biology. Of course, I didn't exactly know I was going to become a marine biologist. When I was young, I was pretty certain that I was going to be on the show Solid Gold. That was my #1 goal in life. I've always been a dancer, and I thought that's what I was going to do. So how did I actually get here? Good question, because I think a lot of us are told and shown that in order to get from A to B, you need to go to college, you need to do grad school, get married, have kids, have some amazing career, then you retire, and then you travel the world. That's what they want you to believe. However, my A to B has been extremely tumultuous and very crooked, and it's been wonderful. And I think everybody needs to have their own path. I started at Middlebury College. I did research experiences for undergraduates. I've studied at different places. I've worked at Organogenesis, which was a company, a biotech company. I've been an intern and I wound up doing my PhD at the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science at the University of Miami. And when I look at this picture in particular of doing field work, you know, at some point when you're in graduate school, you do need to put your head down and do the work. But it can be very difficult when you don't have the support, or when you feel excluded, or if you're just not sure that what you're doing is worthwhile. And you have to find the support, and you have to surround yourself with people who believe in you wholeheartedly. Grad school for me was extremely challenging. I had two parents, overachievers, who both had their PhDs, and even though they had gone through the process themselves, they did note that my experience in the sciences, particularly in marine biology, where there aren't many people of color, was really difficult for me in a way that wasn't the same for them. And a lot of that also had to do with me feeling like I was not supposed to be there, that I was somehow an intruder. And this is a larger problem of DEI work. The question is, why didn't I think I should be there? And in grad school, I think you not only have to deal with feeling like you have to prove yourself and your worth all the time to everyone. If you don't fit that mainstream model of what a marine biologist is supposed to be, quote unquote, then your actions are even more greatly scrutinized. And everything you do, it feels like you're under a microscope. So I was constantly trying to balance the pleasing of the advisor, pleasing of the people, while also trying to move my own work and interests forward. So I finished graduate school at a really tough time in 2009. That was the height of the economic crisis, and I did not have a postdoc, nor did I want to do one. I was kind of disillusioned with science after my graduate work. And so I wound up trying to do an internship at Wildlife Conservation Society, which I did do. And then I moved on to New York City College of Technology, where I worked in the biology department as an assistant adjunct professor, but I also was able to oversee a National Science Foundation grant to improve science, tech, engineering, and mathematics learning at a large urban commuter school in Brooklyn. And that was really impactful and powerful, and showed me the importance of supporting all students in their pursuit of STEM careers. But in 2014, life took a turn again, and I decided to leave my beloved New York for Boca del Toro, Panama. And 7 years ago, I left New York and made my way to Panama. I really want to encourage anyone watching this to choose your own glorious, fun, crooked, messed up path, as I have. It's been very rewarding. I've been here at the School for Field Studies for the past 7 years, where I am the center director for the Tropical Island Biodiversity Studies program located in Boca del Toro, Panama. So Panama is located in between Colombia and Costa Rica, and it has a population of 4.1 million people. It is very small, and there are 10 provinces, and I live in the Boca del Toro province in the archipelago of Boca del Toro. And I live on the island of Isla Colón. I really don't just float around and take pretty pictures, even though that is a life goal, but my work as a marine biologist includes doing surveys and also trying to understand the habitat complexity near mangrove island ecosystems. And I also take undergraduate students interested in the ocean and in rainforests into the field. And additionally, I get to do conservation work by working with local and national entities to support policies that promote conservation and sustainable use of natural resources. So Boca del Toro is a fascinating place. It is comprised of many different ethnic groups, including Afro-Antillanos, indigenous peoples, Chinese Panamanians, Panamanian mestizos, and immigrants from the United States, China, Europe, and South America. It's a highly collectivistic society. In addition, Panama, interestingly, it has the second worst income distribution, in the sense that the top 20% of earners actually control 50% of the economy, which can lead to great levels of inequality. And as I said, Panama is a collectivistic society, whereas the United States is highly individualistic. That comes into play, especially when you start to think about the kinds of conservation work that you might want to do in a small island community. It's home to the largest indigenous group, the Nobe Bugle, and there are many languages spoken on the islands. So what does this have to do with science? Well, I recently gave a TED Talk where I talked about the importance of cultural competence in conservation work. And I truly believe that conservation must be rooted in equity, and that having a cultural understanding really permits us to practice conservation in a way that's sensitive to local community values and traditions, and in a manner that includes people rather than excluding them from the natural spaces and places that are best understood by the people who actually live there. And I think we have to redefine the way in which we use the term science and begin as natural scientists to really value more social science in our day-to-day activities and thinking. And I think that has a major role in the way in which, for example, the 30 by 30 movement has been moving around the world. So weighing heavily on my mind lately is how do we build greater equity and we build equity into our models and frameworks of conservation, and how do we make sure that equity and equitable sharing of natural resources are measures of effectiveness? And I ask this question when my students come. Is paradise a paradise for everyone? What are the inequalities at play surrounding marine protected areas, for example? And that's a really important question when we look at how do we protect, for example, habitat complexity. This is a very complex habitat in this photo. And one of the other questions is who benefits from its protection? Who is actually benefiting? And this is highly dependent on your viewpoint, and it depends on your culture and where your values lie. And so when I think of inclusion and diversity and equity, I think of it from the ocean perspective, and I'm wondering, are fishermen benefiting? Are tourists benefiting? Is the ecosystem benefiting? Who's actually benefiting from some of these policies that seem to be coming down from the global north and having very, very impactful consequences on small island communities, for example, in the global south? And so this is where intersectionality and modes of privilege come in with regard to conservation. Those who have access to nature and education, and who might come from a more individualistic versus collectivistic society, or those who have access to travel and access to law and government and whose voices can be recognized in governance, tend to have greater privilege in the conservation realm. And that's where conservation is quite inequitable. And we need to make that change. That needs to be changed. And so how do we solve some ecological challenges? Well, I think we have to take government officials out, show them the reefs, show them why it's important and worth saving. And here I'm in a photo with the Minister of Tourism, showing him the coral reefs of Boca del Toro. Additionally, you have to hold people in office accountable. I take out assemblymen from the Panamanian National Assembly, that's the youngest member behind me in the photo, and holding them accountable and showing them what's out here and why it's worth saving. So I believe that conservation must be rooted in equity, because I think it will bring more diverse ideas to the table, and therefore we can begin to find solutions that reflect and respect cultural differences. And I think that this is fundamental to solving some of the biggest challenges that we face today. So the lessons learned, number one, you can't do this all alone. Check yourself before you wreck yourself by Ice Cube. Sure, I'm a person. Sure, I'm female. Sure, I am a Black person from the United States. And I put myself in a box and allow others to define who I am. Or I can really force people to look beyond the obvious and do everything that maybe I'm not supposed to be a marine biologist based on who I am, but I am. And I think it's really important that people really force people to look beyond your obvious. Stay positive even when life is looking hairy, and to adopt a growth mindset. To adopt a growth mindset is healthy. And I think it's a beautiful life, and I think you should travel and explore as much as you possibly can. And love. This is my mother. She's been my rock. She is an incredible human being, and she's taught me that you're no different from anyone else. And you should be open and receptive to all forms of love, because I think that helps shape who you are and how you're going to interact with others in the world. And if you want to join me on this mission to build greater equity in ocean science, you can follow me at cindaseeds.world and on Instagram. Also, we have an organization along with Dr. Nikki Traylor Knowles, who is the founder of Black Women in Ecology, Evolution, and Marine Science, which I'm a proud board member of. So please consider joining. If you are a Black woman in ecology, evolution, and marine science, we are here for you, creating community. And finally, thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing what the other panelists have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I really enjoy all these presentations. So our next speaker is Dr. Ivana Setnik. Ivana is an oceanographer in the Ocean Ecology Laboratory at University Space Research Association, NASA Goddard Space Flight Center.
Hello to everyone. My name is Ivana Setnik. I am a USRA oceanographer at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I am also many other things, but I am not an inspirational speaker and I am not an engineer. But I'm very honored to be part of the Oceans Women Engineered panel discussion this morning. So I can tell you what I am. I am by training a biologist, and I am in love deeply with the phytoplankton, which you can see one of the examples here. They're beautiful, they're gorgeous, and they rule the world. And very early in my phytoplankton career, just as I was start my first PhD in Croatia, I figured out that using a microscope is not going to get me too far. It's not give me the understanding that I really want to gain about what's the role that these little creatures play in an oceanic world cycle. So search for science took me a long way. I shifted my career from sitting in a microscope towards building new methods and developing new technology that could help us better understand the role that this phytoplankton have in world and their diversity, what kind of role they play in oceanic biogeochemistry and the general carbon cycle. And my path took me from Croatia, where I started my PhD, which I dropped, through California, where I actually got my PhD, then to Maine, where I worked for 6 years as a postdoc, and then as a researcher, and then as a professor, and now to NASA, where I have been for 6 years now. I work on many things, but specifically on one big project, Plankton Aerosol Cloud Ocean Ecosystem, which is NASA's new and upcoming ocean color mission. I'm a lead biogeochemist there. And I'm also a project scientist for Exports, which is NASA and NSF funded large field campaign that has lots of robots. Both of these really try to use technology, state-of-the-art technology, to understand the role that phytoplankton plays in oceanic carbon cycle, which is generally in ocean ecology. As I travel the seas and lands, obviously, I have thought about it, and I think these are the take-home messages that you first have to take. First set of take-home messages. Everything that I did and achieved in my career is because I jumped on opportunities, and sometimes without thinking, and sometimes there were consequences. But these opportunities are mostly offered by my amazing mentors that I was lucky to have throughout my career, and I still have. And when the things didn't work out, or they did, I was very loud about it. And that did bring me some recognition and some penalties, but I think that's a good approach. And I can tell you an example about it. Maybe that's going to bring that home. This is Mary Jane Perry. She's a queen of oceanography, realm of phytoplankton and optical tools. I was lucky to have her as my postdoctoral advisor. And it's not only science that she taught. She taught me how, yes, still to this day, is dominated by minorities. Let's put it that way politely. And while in the early stages in her career, she had to carry a knife around to make sure that there's no sexual harassment, and she had to talk really, really loud and nonstop over her colleagues so her voice could be heard. Over the years, she gained some other qualities that allow her to be where she is in her science, and her knowledge can be heard. And she taught me some of these things, some more successfully, some less successfully. One thing she was really, really good about is make sure that I jump on opportunities. one of the opportunities opened up early in the stages of planning for SABRE. SABRE was NASA's field campaign where we tried to combine ocean observations from the ship and from the aircraft to use polarization to understand phytoplankton in the ocean. That has not been done before. And now we're going to fly a polarimeter on PACE. And during the phone call, the scientist who had to be the lead on the ship said that he cannot do it. Then she muted the phone call and said, "You say you do it, you'll do it." And I said, "I'm going to do it." And that's one of the things where I didn't really thought about the consequences, because just, I think maybe a month later, I became pregnant with Valis. And Valis is the best kid ever. He's 7 years now. And this is picture of me and Valis next to a research vessel. Saber Valis, 4 months old there. While I was pregnant, I was in 2 cruises, over 20 days long. And while I was a chief scientist in this cruise, I was breastfeeding. And through this whole process, I was contacting people and stuff. And I was amazed that there's not a single rule, some document, something that we as a sailing women can look towards and understand, what can we do? Can we sail when we're pregnant or not? What do we do with the breastfeeding milk? I'm not going to throw it away. And nobody really wanted to talk about it. Nobody gave me clear answers. So as always, as I do, I turn towards social media. I'm a really good friend, Beth Orca from Bigelow, and we started a discussion that ended up as a paper. This is a paper where we evaluated the position of women in oceanography, specifically the position of seagoing women. And I have to say that it was the hardest review that I ever had in my life. What the paper got published, and one of the things that we shared as recommendation is that we encourage UNOS to adopt a form of policy related to the ability of pregnant women to participate in seagoing field work. Because this was something that frustrated me to the point that I wrote that paper. I know that causation is not correlation, correlation is not causation, but just this year, coincidentally, UNOS formed the Pregnancy, Privacy, and Harassment Committee as an ad hoc committee, and then since then, it's been operating as a standing committee. So that's my little story. How I followed opportunities thanks to good mentorships and just decided to be loud when things were not going well. But as I'm sadly realizing that not anymore in this early career stages, that I'm actually a middle career scientist, these kind of recommendations are given a little bit of a lift. I'm now in a position to give opportunity to people who didn't have any, and I'm trying to be a really good mentor, mimicking Mary Jane and many other mentors that I had. And sometimes I'm mom, sometimes I'm friend, sometimes I'm everything to people that need it. And I'm still being very, very loud, because sometimes the people that I'm mentoring, that I gave the opportunities, just don't have a voice. So with that, I'm gonna close up this story, and I look forward to our discussion throughout this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. So our final presenter is Miss Nikita Shiel-Roll. She's known as the Eagle Ray Empress, and she's the owner of Cat Island Mermaid and the founder and CEO of Young Marine Explorers and the Cat Island Conservation Institute.
Hi, my name's Eagle Ray Empress, also known as Nikita Shiel-Roll, and it truly is a pleasure to be with you today to share an ocean love story and also reflect on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to start my talk today sharing that this is actually a really difficult topic for me to talk on, although I do speak often about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's difficult because it requires me to often relive a lot of traumatic experiences that I have had as a woman of color in the ocean science space. And I'm going to start today just sharing that within the past couple of months, I've had I've had someone tell me that it's not possible for me to be an ocean expert because of the way that I look, because ocean experts don't look like me. And unfortunately, this is not a unique experience. I have time and time again had to learn how to respond and not react when confronted with often a white man, does not believe that I'm capable of knowing the things that I know or speaking with authority about the work that I do. And I share that because, you know, today we're a really important topic, and it's a topic that requires not just a panel, although I'm so excited that this is a panel that is existing here. But I think it's really important that when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, what we're really talking about is that as individuals, all of us collectively have to commit to developing self-awareness. We have to commit to showing up every day in every single situation, acknowledging when we are in a power of privilege, when we can then identify how we use our privilege to then create opportunities and ensure that voices of whether there's minorities or underrepresented people or marginalized voices are being heard. And so with this, I'm going to dive into my presentation and just share a little bit about my career. So between the years of 2002 and 2007, I was diving deep into the ocean. I became an open water diver, followed by a dive master, worked as an underwater photographer and videographer at a dive company. And then when I went to University of Miami, I became an AAUS science diver. And in that same year, I founded Young Bahamian Marine Scientists. Young Bahamian Marine Scientists was the initial organization that led to the establishment of Young Marine Explorers, the organization that I currently run. In 2009, I had the most epic experience of becoming a cave diver and being able to explore blue holes throughout the Bahamas, and one that was specifically on my family land. And you'll see that in the picture in the top left is myself with my grandmother, my father, and my uncle. And while this day was such an exciting day for me, it was also a very painful day, because I remember part of our research team making fun of the fact that my family was so excited to be hosting, hosting the researchers. And it was a very dismissive experience where often, and I hate that I have to say this, but often people believe because of the color of your skin, you're not intelligent. People believe because of the color of your skin, and you're just not worth as much. And it was just really painful hearing people that were colleagues, even though I was a student at the time, speak so negatively about my family, and whether or not they knew they were my family. I get emotional just thinking about it now. It just reinforced how colonialism, how white supremacy seeps through and permeates so much of our ocean space. So that was also a very interesting time in my career. And I bring this up because it was the beginning of me really starting to be recognized and noticed for the work that I was doing. I was traveling a lot around the world, speaking about the conservation work. My work at that time primarily focused on marine education, education for sustainable development, and biodiversity conservation. And however, at the same time, I was in the middle of a deep, dark depression. And so pictures, I was dead inside. And this period between 2016 and 2019 was really a really dark time in my career and just in my life in general. And that was, while it was probably one of the darkest periods of my career, it was also the most transformational time. And I learned during this time, I took a course on the foundations of social justice. And for the first time, I developed a vocabulary to be able to articulate and express what it is that I was thinking and feeling. And then all of a sudden, as I was able to connect the dots about how our colonial history impacted our education and how and why I was was trapped in a glass box that I was not aware of. And it was through learning about social justice. It was through learning and developing a vocabulary that enabled me to talk about oppression, to learn how to be in the oppression but not of the oppression, to learn that there are more liberatory modes of operating in this world. These skills really transformed how I do my work. And this led me to a time in after Hurricane Dorian, where we had the Bahamas was devastated. The Bahamas was absolutely devastated. The northern Bahamas was destroyed. And I made a decision. I made a decision to establish the Cat Island Conservation Institute. And often in my career, what I have unfortunately experienced with some of my mentors, not all of them, but with some of them, is that what I know that I'm capable of and what my mentors think that I'm capable of do not align. And often that has led to really, really toxic work experiences. And the last mentor breakup that I am still going through really was rooted in a lot of racism and an undertone. You know, it's unfortunately, I believe we live in a world where sometimes it's difficult for people to see other perspectives. And I think this is really the heart of what liberation, what equity looks like. Equity, creating equitable worlds, whether it is ensuring that marginalized communities have the resources to be able to survive the changing climate, or where women in science are not prejudged, criticized, harassed, sexually abused, and because either the way that we look or yeah. This requires, in order to navigate this requires all of us to develop self-awareness. And it's a lifelong journey. And I think it is desperately needed within our ocean science space, especially when so many of us in the ocean science space are here driving the innovation that's going to change our world. And we need diversity of opinion, we need diversity of perspectives, we need diversity of lived realities, because that is the only way that we are going to create the change that we all want to see. And this brings me to last year's Oceans 2020 conference, where I was asked a question: how do we talk about climate change so that we're not so annoying? And I realized that I had to transform the way I did my work, because if people in the global north were thinking that conversations about climate change were so annoying, we were not going to save lives. And this is when I started talking about ocean love. And my two major takeaways from last year's Oceans 2020 conference was that as members of our global community, we need to be more intentional about learning to live, work, and play together, and really understanding each other's norms. And that those of us who live in big ocean states really need to become better at articulating our needs. And this is where the power of data comes in. And so immediately after Oceans 2020, working with a dynamic team, we began to tell our story of our ocean innovation work and really try to help Bahamians process and begin to have a conversation about how our colonial history has created serious roadblocks to our national development. And that while, yes, we have many people who struggle with literacy and numeracy, and then, you know, science literacy isn't even a thing, right? So these are all barriers that need to be addressed in order for Bahamians and people from Caribbean islands to really be able to tap into the magic of the ocean. And I fundamentally believe that research skills are social justice tools, and our task is to train an army of climate crusaders armed not with guns, but with steam. And with that, it brings me to such joy that because of incredible people and women, actually incredible women, part of the MTS and IEEE community have helped my community gain access to ROV in a bag kit, a few of them. And we're going to be building these ROVs with our community scientists and our students so that we're going to be able to explore the mermaid hole. This is the mermaid hole, one of the many biodiversity hotspots that we have throughout the Bahamas that, to be honest, we don't even know what's in there. And this is what is so cool when you have a population that cannot swim, being able to have access to this technology is really going to be transformational. So with that, I want to thank you so much for joining me as I shared a little bit about my ocean love story. With that, Maskana, that is gratitude in Amharic, which is an Ethiopian language. Thank you.
So I don't know about the rest of you, but all of those, they were so emotionally charged and they have so much good information there. And I'm sure you have lots of questions, right? So I'm hoping somebody's gonna hop up now and come over to the mic and ask a question, or put your question into the chat and Jane will voice it for you. But if you don't have any questions, I have a few that I can plant in there. Do we have any brave souls to ask some questions? Yes, please come up.
Hi, my name is Liz Smith from Old Dominion University. I just thank you all so much. I'm close to tears. I feel inspired by your stories and really appreciate your sharing them. And what I'd like to hear from you is some more about your thoughts on mentorship. As a graduate student a long time ago, I never heard this before, but our last speaker said it. She needed to break up with her mentor, and I should have broken up with my advisor at that time, but I just didn't know that I could do it or how to do it. And I think it would have been transformative if I'd been able to. So I would love to hear a little more about mentorship from you, finding them, having more than one. Your advisor may not be your mentor. So kind of a whole bunch of things running around, but thank you.
So that's an excellent question. I just want to, are we going to have the panelists up on the screen? Oh, panelists, can you turn on your videos, please? They're like, it's early in the morning. Do we have to? There they are. All right. Why don't we start with, let's start with Cinda, because I know, I love her, the way that she explains this, so I want to hear Cinda first.
So I broke up with both of my mentors. Well, they weren't mentors. Let's just be real. These are not people that were mentors in any way, shape, or form. My first graduate advisor, I had to leave his lab. I had a racial incident occur that required me to exit the lab. And I left without any support. It was the first time in the history of the department that a student had left a lab. I mean, this is very taboo in academia. You left your advisor's lab, you know, and I was fortunate because I had my own funding. I was fully funded by NOAA EPP program. And so I took my money and I left, and I fortunately found another lab on the same campus. But I also fell into the same den of despair with this particular person who I wound up finishing my work with. While he was not outwardly racist, you know, there were everyday microaggressions, every day, you know, trying to prove that I was smart enough. Before, like, I remember before doing my dissertation defense, I went over the slides with him and he says, "Did you really come up with this all by yourself?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I did." And I was gracious and I said, I learned this because of you, hello. That's the whole point, right? I'm supposed to learn something here and I'm supposed to become an expert. No, isn't that why I'm here? So, yeah, I mean, it's real. That's what, and then I haven't spoken to him in probably 7 years, and I have no desire to. Luckily, I had two very, very important women in my life throughout graduate school who were actually advisors. That's Dr. Laura Fleming and Dr. Alexandra Warden. They're incredible people who recognized in me that I was fully capable and that I was actually becoming an expert in my field. But imagine you're going through your entire graduate career with someone who doesn't even believe that you're capable and that I'm just there because I have a NOAA EPP award. So I shouldn't really be there, right? Because it's like something that they give to the Black kids so that they can come to school here. So you're really seen as kind of an afterthought. And I think in terms of mentoring, you have to stop that. Students already coming in, and that goes for anyone. It's like you feel like you're an imposter at first. Do I really belong here? And as a mentor, it's your responsibility to make sure that every single day that student knows that they belong there and that they have a right to be there and that they're smart and that they're intelligent and that they can do the work. And if students don't have that, then yeah, you're going to sink into a depression or you're going to sink into this feeling that you can't and you struggle because you're dealing with all this outside nonsense that, I can't do this because no one believes in me. That's all.
Thank you, Cinda. I was saying, Nikita or Ivano, who wants to go next? Oh, she's pointing at Nikita. Nikita's going next.
You go
I
next.
love this virtual space. Thank you, everyone. It is so beautiful to be here and to be part of this conversation. This is a topic, right? Mentorship, because I want to, I think, start my response by saying I would not be where I am today. I would not be doing the work that I'm doing if it wasn't for the incredible people that I have spent time with. And some of them have been, mentors and friends and. So there's such value, I think, in a lot of different relationships. And I think often relationships can be built when they're built not on equitable foundations based on true truth and respect, they are doomed to fail. And I think this is kind of what has happened for me as it related to some of the mentors that I've worked with. And I think it's also important to remember, like, when times were good, they were really, really good. And then also I think everything there's a threshold. And then once you start crossing that threshold, you stop learning. And I always sort of committed to myself. Even I remember when my very first job as an underwater photographer, when I kind of felt like I had stopped learning in that relationship, it was time for me to move on. And unfortunately, it's not always that easy when your mentors are so deeply involved in your work, whether it's a business relationship or an academic relationship. And so I guess as far as I think mentors are so important. And I am constantly learning how to be a better leader, how to show up as my best self so that I can mentor others and not perpetuate habits that I learned. And so I think so much about being a mentor is one, constantly being on that personal journey of self-discovery, so then you can share those tools with the people who are around you, but then also really learning to be humble and willing to learn, because we don't know everything. And I think that's why diversity is so important, is that the lack of diversity gives you this false belief that you are this norm and the status quo, but you're not. But if you only spend time around people that look like you and kind of like the same music as you, well, your flower garden is pretty just bland. We want to spice it up. So, and I say that as it relates to mentorship, because I think it's also important for us to, because especially when you're dealing with a mentee, I think one, being able, like, constantly checking in. And the same thing if you're a student or you are in a relationship with a mentor that you have to exit, like, that's where you got to do the deep personal work, because chances are if you're leaving a mentorship relationship, it's toxic, and it's toxic based on some core fundamental beliefs that probably have to do with white supremacy. And so that requires so much self-love, so much investment in your knowing that you are worthy, that you are enough, so that when you show up in these spaces that you are feeling less than, you're able to maneuver to the best of your ability so that you can get yourself to a safer, more loving and supportive working environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikita. Ivana, do you want to jump in?
I mean, again, my perspective are a little bit different, coming from, like, I'm not a person of color. I'm just a woman and, a foreigner. I was lucky enough in my life to have great mentors. And what I learned about being a good mentor is exactly what Nikita said. It's a continuous growth curve. And you have to keep learning and changing, modifying. One important thing that I learned about mentors who I really adored is that they put their personal self. They in a sense, being a foreigner, you are coming into a different land, different culture and stuff. They kind of embedded me in their family. Not just academic, just made me feel at home, to the point that, like, my grad school advisor, his wife sent, because he found me sleeping in lab because I was programming, like, he I was just gonna fall asleep on a computer. She sent a blankie and a couch and stuff so I can sleep there. That's that step that made me feel welcome. That's a step that made me realize that I have a family there, and that the family supports me academically and personally, which is really important when you're in grad school and living out of no money and you're hunting, in my case, like lobsters along Long Beach, so you can pretty much eat something. So it's that, and also, like, I think world will be such a boring place. I mean, you learn from other cultures. So, like, for you were making this aspect of music. For me, it's food. I learned so much from my students that come from different parts of the world, and about their background and stuff, and that makes me a better mentor, and I listen to them. Try to understand what I'm doing wrong, so for the next generation, for the next mentorship that I have to do, I change the things and make myself different, make myself better. But again, mentorship for me is crucial. That hand that picks you up and brings you, and good mentorship that realizes not just your academic portion of the stuff, but just your emotional belonging and stuff. This is the person that you spend most of your life with during your grad school or postdoc, and it's mentorship for me, it's crucial. So yeah, I know if that made sense.
It makes perfect sense. So we don't have very much time left. I think we get kicked out of here at 8 o'clock. So we've got 5 minutes. Do you guys want to have, like, a short closing remarks? Just get whatever off of your chest that you want the audience to hear after watching all of our presentations again. Yeah? Let's start with Nikita.
Ooh, all right. Well, I'm sad that I can't see your beautiful faces. But maybe one day we'll meet, maybe at the next year conference. But I think it is just so great that these conversations are happening. Clearly this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm grateful for you showing up, and I'm excited to hear about what you learn and what you reflect on as we move on. So please definitely connect with me either on Instagram or LinkedIn, Cat Island Kita or Nikita Shield Roll. I'd love to keep the conversation going, and then also see how you might be able to work with my community as we dive deeper into the ocean with technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikita. Cinda?
Yeah, I'm sad this has to end so early, but I would say I think it really is up to you to make the change. And I mean that in the sense that you need to do the work. This is not just a sit back and be passive situation. If we really want to see change and we want to see more people of color in different positions, you know, always we're talking about why are there no people of color in the professorship and all of this. We know why. It's not a hidden thing. Racism prevails. We have systemic injustices. We have to do the work, which means you have to take a look inside of yourself and figure out what implicit biases you hold and how can you break those down? How can you encourage young people to go into these really niche fields that are predominantly white spaces? Why is that, right? So I think it's really important to recognize that and work on it. It's a continuous work in progress, and to find allies who are with you in wanting to do a better job and understand how to break down these barriers that impede so many of us from excelling in these fields. So it's a big job, but we can, I think, work together to get there. Thank you.
Thanks, Cinda. Ivana?
I'd start to say something smart after these two, but I'll just to kind of continue in the same idea. Earlier this week, we had a conversation where Nikita also mentioned that she took the social justice class, and pretty much I was on Coursera in half an hour looking for social justice classes because that's what is available for me right now during quarantine. And I think in order to do so, in order to do everything what Cinda and Nikita said, we have to really, as Cindy said, look inside of ourselves and try to figure out to be a better person, continuously working hard, because like the full-time job and full-time being mom and all that stuff, it's really hard to take a class, just a simple teeny tiny class. I find time to make myself better as a person, to be a better advocate, because I'm sadly, because of the social construct of our society, in a better position than Nikita and Cinda is. And I'm sitting here ready to be an ally because, you know, and in order to be an ally, in order to help our society move forward, our teeny tiny, really niche community, I have to work on myself and then, you know, try to, you know, give that hand and pull somebody after me. So there's more of us in a position of power. No, you girls are sad. You know, I'm talking about, you know, probably some ladies in the audience that just need a hand. So I'm here to, easy to find. Only one with the purple hair in NASA. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
So I thank you all for coming, and thank the panelists. I love the energy that this panel has, and I hope that you all stay in touch and we continue to chat. We have a little chat going in the WhatsApp, right? And so if you saw me up here just smiling randomly, it's because we were over here chatting on WhatsApp. So I love this energy. I hope that you all will ask questions, get a hold of them. They're all available, right? And I'm also available. So please ask questions. Continue to, in this conference, continue to learn and grow and be aware, just pay attention, right, to the experiences that people are having. And I really appreciate you all showing up this early. Thank you.